This is ridiculous. As a recent report came out from Elliot Friedman revealing some very interesting trade details about Jacob Markstrom that happened prior to him getting dealt to the Devils. And what this information is might surprise you. So write that down in this episode, as well as a free agency update regarding a defenseman. We have some new news regarding that. Stay tuned for all that. Before we do, if you're a part of the 80 or so percent who aren't subscribed, make sure to hit the subscribe button. It would mean the world to Darius and myself as we're on the road to 11,000 subscribers. We're getting very, very close. But Darius, some interesting news came out the other day, and we kind of covered it a little bit in the video before, but this is getting a little bit ridiculous, and you've been predicting this since all the way back at the trade deadline with the Calgary Flames, and it's about Jacob Markstrom. And the Leafs were very much so in on Jacob Markstrom to the point where they made an offer as good as the offer that the Devils was, but as you'll see from this report, the Flames were not interested. So NHL rumor roundup: Maple Leafs made comparable offer for Markstrom, and on the surface that seems like okay, makes some sense. It is interesting to see that the Leafs were ready to push some of their chips to the front of the table and potentially move assets for Jacob Markstrom. It was no secret that the Maple Leafs are in the market for a goaltender. We're among the teams looking to swing a deal. Unfortunately, a deal between Toronto and Calgary could not come to fruition despite general manager Brad Treliving putting together a fair trade proposal, Elliot Friedman said. And if you go here, I heard their offer to Calgary was comparable to New Jersey's, but I think because of the politics there, Toronto was going to have to blow anyone else out of the water. And there's also some interesting details saying that Markstrom was open to playing in these Canadian other Canadian teams like Toronto and Ottawa, even though his preference was New Jersey. So Darius, the Leafs, there's a lot of things to take from this. Obviously, I don't think a deal between Calgary and Toronto is ever going to get done for the foreseeable future, at least when Brad is under the helm of the Toronto Maple Leafs. But the Leafs were in on Jacob Markstrom, which might hint at what their plans are going forward.
Yeah, it's going to be to get a goalie. And I think that's very interesting. Like a very interesting tidbit that came out over the last couple of days that Toronto was very much in this thing. Their offer was very comparable to New Jersey's, but few factors, right? Calgary simply just doesn't want to trade with Brad Treliving, right? They just don't want to trade with this guy because he left the team 2 seasons ago. And obviously, Markstrom waived for New Jersey last year. So there's that, right? Very interesting, though. It looks like the Leafs are going to be obviously targeting a goalie in free agency now because they wanted this guy. And say what you will about his age and the last couple seasons, right? He's still a very good goalie. Like, he's going to be a really good goalie for New Jersey. So it would have been a pretty decent option for the Leafs, especially with Woll. I also think that the Woll injury stuff is a little bit blown out of proportion. Yes, you have to worry about it, but it was only 1 season at the end of the day. So you wonder what you have in him next year. But yeah, very interesting that the Leafs, we saw it last year at the trade deadline too, or even leading up to it. The Leafs had a better offer than the Canucks for Zadorov from Calgary on the table. And the Calgary Flames decided to go with the Canucks offer. They did not want to trade with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I think the same type of thing happened with Chris Tanev at the deadline. So if they're a Calgary Flame, I don't think they're going to end up a Toronto Maple Leaf as long as Brad Treliving is here. And that's a shame.
Yeah, and luckily most of the targets now, Chris Tanev was traded anyway, so don't have to worry about that. And Jacob Markstrom, and it kind of goes to show that the Leafs, they're in a market for a goalie, obviously. And Markstrom would have been the 1A goalie. He would have been a bridge for a couple of years while him and Woll are kind of the tandem, while Dennis Hildeby is waiting to come up. It would have made a lot of sense. And the package that the Devils ultimately gave up was not much anyway. It was like a heavily protected first and a prospect that the Leafs could have definitely matched. And someone said, what are the odds? Elliot's sources on this is Treliving himself, which is true. It could be Brad Treliving leaking that out to say, hey, to the fans, like, it's not my fault that none of these moves have went down over the past few years. Obviously, with the Tanev stuff, they didn't have a second-round pick because of Kyle Dubas. Same thing with Nikita Zadorov with, obviously, the Canucks. It was kind of the same thing there. But I don't know. Very, very interesting. And, again, comparable offer is the thing here, meaning the Leafs were ready. They were ready to give up assets for Jacob Markstrom, which highlights what their plan is going forward, which is they need to get a very good goalie. And I think Laurent Brossoit is probably the guy. He's less proven than Jacob Markstrom. Jacob Markstrom has been a very good goalie in the league for a while as a 1A. Obviously, Brossoit would be more of a tandem type thing. But if they were going for Markstrom, they were ready to move Woll onto that 1B position because you're not trading for Jacob Markstrom to have him play 20, 25 games.
No, which is fine. And he was probably going to play a lot, right? Markstrom, that is, and Woll a little bit less. But still, I don't think Markstrom would have been like the 1A starter for the Leafs in way of games played, right? He obviously would have been like heading into the playoffs or something like that. But again, it's not going to happen. And it might be a good thing. The Leafs can now pivot to a different goalie and really focus on something in free agency instead of giving up more assets besides cap space, obviously. So I think now their focus is going to shift to Laurent Brossoit, which is a little exciting for me personally. I think that's one of the better options out there right now, just based on, salary cap and all that, because Markstrom would have been a lot to take on, even with retained salary. You would have given up a little bit, obviously a first round pick, but obviously Calgary does not want to trade with the Leafs, so that didn't happen.
Yeah, and now to see what goalie they'll pivot. There's no secret that they're desperately trying to get a goalie. I mean, Samsonov, right now they really have one goalie, and that's Joseph Woll. You can make a case for Martin Jones, Matt Murray, all these guys that could return. But ultimately, a very interesting report that came out, and I think there's more to this than just the Flames don't want to trade with the Leafs. It's the fact that their plans now have kind of been revealed to a degree because of how much thought they put into upgrading the goalie position. This would have been a big swing. I would have been surprised if they trade for Jacob Markstrom, but they were about to do it, and they had the offer at the table. Now, they probably knew deep down that the Flames were going to trade with the Devils just because of obviously the beef or whatever's going on there, and because he wanted to go to New Jersey and they wanted to do fine by him. But let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on all this. Friedman getting some interesting info out there. But Darius, before we move on, I want to read this part out here, and this is about the politics. That as far as the politics are concerned, that stems from last year when, of course, Brad Treliving joined the Leafs. He later joined the Leafs a month before his contract with the Flames expired, and that led to all kinds of silly stipulations. So that's why all this is kind of going down and why the Flames aren't really ready to do business and deals with the Toronto Maple Leafs, because there's still some hidden drama there. But we do have an update on a defenseman that we covered a couple weeks ago, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Darius. It appears the ship has sailed in the Leafs' pursuit of Mario Ferraro. One player no longer on the radar is Mario Ferraro of the San Jose Sharks. The Leafs and the Sharks had discussions during the season, but I'm told he does not fit their current plans. Do you have any thoughts on that? Obviously, we know Brad Treliving has said that they want to augment the defensive core and shake that up a lot, and we suspect tons of defensive changes are coming. Ferraro won't be a part of it.
Yeah, I saw a few people on Twitter upset about this because they thought he would have been a really good depth option, and he had a really good season last year on a bad team, right? He's looking like he's progressing pretty well at the NHL level. And I think this is exciting. That's an exciting quote to me because he doesn't fit into their new plans, right? They're obviously going to do something with the blue line here, which is far beyond like a Mario Ferraro type player. Like they're going to do big things here. They're probably going to make a big splash in free agency. That's what that tells me. Obviously, it's not a direct quote from an insider or somebody within the organization. I should say. Obviously, it's from Pagnotta, but it looks like they're going to make a big splash in free agency. This is not a guy that they want to trade for. They want to, they have bigger things that they want to do with the blue line. So to me, it's exciting. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, it seems like they have bigger aspirations than Mario Ferraro, who is a very good player, but you look at some of the free agent, and this would obviously be a trade, so you're giving up assets. Maybe they're looking more like Brett Pesce. Maybe they're looking at Brendan Montour. Like, there's a lot of different guys that they could go for now. Obviously, a Pesce Montour free agency would be a masterclass by Brad Treliving, depending on the money. But Mario Ferraro doesn't fit in their plans. It probably means that bigger moves are coming, and it seems like based on this, you're thinking about them passing on Ferraro and going kind of all in on really the best goalie on the market. Was the best goalie on the market, I guess. It seems like big things and big changes are coming for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on all this, and would you have wanted to see, Jacob Markstrom on the Leafs? See you soon.